an interstellar distress signal, weak and broken, barely distinguishable from the static hum of the cosmos. At first, it seemed like another anomaly, a burst of radiation, a collapsed star's dying echo, or perhaps the remnants of some forgotten, alien transmission lost in time. But then, the patterns emerged. Not randomness, not noise. A structured signal, layered and deliberate, hidden beneath the chaos of space. For decades, humanity had listened to the stars, waiting, hoping to hear a voice in the dark. And now, after centuries of silence, the universe finally spoke back. Not with the greetings of a thriving civilization, but with a desperate, haunting plea. Help us. It wasn't a simple transmission. The signal had been traveling for centuries, degraded and distorted by the cosmic void. When Earth's deep space array finally decrypted the message, what remained was fragmented, pieces of a warning, coordinates, and an urgent call for aid. What little was understood sent shockwaves through Earth's scientific, military, and political institutions. Who had sent it, and why now, after so long? Through careful reconstruction, linguists and xenocryptographers identified the source, the Zalzari, a species that, according to scattered galactic records, had once been among the dominant civilizations of the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way. Their influence had stretched across thousands of systems. They were builders, scholars, and warriors, a species that had shaped the fate of entire sectors. But something had happened. Something had shattered them. The distress call contained chilling fragments of their history. Mentions of fleets burned, worlds consumed, civilizations erased. They spoke of an enemy unlike any other, the Devourers. A force that did not conquer, did not negotiate. It simply consumed. It wasn't long before the weight of this discovery reached Earth's highest councils. The United Nations Stellar Command, the governing body overseeing interstellar exploration and defense, convened an emergency session. Every nation, every corporate faction, every scientific institution had a stake in the matter. Some argued for caution. After all, if a civilization as advanced as the Zalzari had been crushed, what chance did humanity have? Others saw opportunity, a chance to learn from the remnants of a once mighty species, to uncover secrets of lost technology. But one sentiment overruled all others. Humanity needed to know. We had spent centuries believing we were alone, that our wars, our struggles, our victories and failures existed in isolation. Now, standing at the precipice of something far greater, the choice was clear. We had to answer the call. The decision was made. A reconnaissance fleet was dispatched, led by the HSV Valkyrie, a cutting-edge warship equipped with the finest technology humanity had ever built. Alongside it traveled the Solace, a medical and research vessel, along with 2 escort frigates. Their mission was simple: make contact, assess the situation, and determine if there was anything left to save. And so, humanity embarked on a journey toward the unknown, guided by a message that had traveled for centuries. But when the fleet arrived at the coordinates provided in the signal, what they found was far worse than anyone had imagined. The Zalzari, homeworld, once a thriving beacon of culture and power, was now a graveyard. The planet's atmosphere was thick with ash, its cities reduced to smoldering ruins. Massive structures, once symbols of an advanced civilization, lay shattered like the bones of a long-dead giant. Orbital platforms drifted aimlessly, their hulls scorched, their systems lifeless. Wreckage stretched for miles, the remains of ships that had fought in the final, desperate battle against an enemy that left nothing behind. But what haunted the human fleet most were the survivors. The Zalzari were still there, but they were not the proud species recorded in galactic archives. They were gaunt, hollow-eyed, their bodies frail from malnutrition and disease. They cowered in the ruins of their once great cities, their technology reduced to scrap, their minds haunted by horrors no living being should have to endure. When they saw the human ships, they didn't rejoice. They didn't celebrate. They feared. It wasn't fear of invasion. It wasn't terror at the unknown. It was something deeper, something ancient. Because the Zalzari knew what humanity was. They had watched us from afar, long before we even knew they existed. They had seen us rise from the ashes of war again and again, relentless in our survival. They had witnessed our history, our conflicts, our victories. They knew that humanity was a species unlike any other, a species that did not break, did not yield. And now, with their backs against the wall, with extinction clawing at their throats, they had no choice but to ask for help from the one species they had once sworn never to interfere with. But humanity's response was not what they expected. The moment humanity's fleet entered orbit, silence fell over the ruined world. The Zalzari survivors, those who still had the strength to move, staggered from the depths of shattered buildings, peering up at the sky as if seeing ghosts. Their expressions were not those of hope, nor of relief. Instead, they looked upon the human warships with something deeper, something that sent an uneasy chill through every captain and officer aboard the fleet. Dread. Commander Elias Rains, the mission leader, watched the readings on his display. The planet's biosphere was in collapse. Oxygen levels were plummeting. Radiation pockets had formed across the equator, and vast industrial centers had been stripped down to lifeless husks. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been a simple war. It had been systematic, precise, a culling. A transmission came through, weak and distorted, originating from what had once been the Zalzari's capital city. The signal was barely strong enough to form a coherent message, but after several minutes of recalibration, the voice of a survivor crackled through the comms. "You should not have come." Those 5 words hung in the air like a death sentence. The human officers exchanged glances. They had expected desperation, pleas for salvation, but instead, their arrival was met with something far more ominous. Rains responded, his voice steady. "This is the United Nations Stellar Command Fleet. We received your distress call and have come to render aid. Identify yourself." A long silence followed before a reply came through. "I am Sokol, last of the High Elders of the Zalzari. If you came here looking for survivors, you will find only the dying." The bridge crew of the Valkyrie remained still, absorbing the weight of those words. Rains pressed forward. "We've come to help." Sokol's voice grew sharper. "No, you have come because you think you are strong enough to defy death. But you are wrong. Leave this place. Forget you ever heard our name. If you value your people, your worlds, your very existence, you will turn back now." It was not a plea. It was a warning. The fleet's sensors scanned the surface, confirming what the Zalzari elder had said. The majority of the planet's population was already gone. What few remained were barely clinging to life. But what the scans also detected was something else. Something buried deep beneath the surface, sending out pulses of residual energy. Ruins of an advanced technological facility, still faintly active despite the devastation. Rains hesitated for only a moment before issuing his orders. "Prep, an expeditionary team. We're going down." The descent into darkness aboard the Valkyrie, a team of Marines, scientists, and engineers suited up. They had no idea what to expect, only that whatever had crushed the Zalzari might still be out there. As the dropships tore through the polluted skies, the crew could see the full scale of the destruction up close. Towering structures hollowed out by orbital bombardments, streets lined with skeletal remains, entire sections of the planet turned to glass. When they landed, the atmosphere was thick with the stench of decay. The Zalzari survivors had retreated deep underground, huddled in the remnants of what had once been a great civilization. The moment they saw the armored figures of human soldiers approaching, many of them scrambled away in terror. Not a single one ran toward them for help. Something was deeply wrong. Rains and his team pushed forward toward the source of the residual energy signature, navigating through the crumbling ruins until they reached a massive structure, one that had been built into the very foundation of the planet. Ancient architecture fused with cutting-edge technology, its walls lined with inscriptions that even the most advanced translation algorithms struggled to decipher. The entrance stood partially open, a massive fissure in the reinforced alloy. It had been torn apart from the inside. The team hesitated, weapons at the ready. Something had broken out of this facility. Something powerful enough to tear through walls designed to withstand the worst the galaxy had to offer. Inside, the air was stale and metallic. thick with the scent of burned circuits and decay. Lights flickered along the walls, casting eerie shadows as the team advanced. The deeper they moved, the more they saw the remnants of what had once been a research facility. But research into what? Then they found the first containment chamber. Rows of massive pods, shattered and empty, lined the walls. Inside, the faint remnants of something organic clung to the glass, as if whatever had been contained here had fought violently to escape. Data terminals flickered, still running on emergency power. One of the engineers, Dr. Kessler, managed to bypass the ancient security protocols and access the logs. What she found sent ice through her veins. Project Revenant. Final log. The file contained fragmented records, detailing an experiment that had begun centuries ago. The Zalzari had been researching a form of biomechanical enhancement, an attempt to create warriors capable of surviving any environment, enduring any wound, and fighting without fear. But something had gone horribly wrong. The subjects had not remained stable, they had evolved. The logs described how the experimental warriors had turned on their creators, breaking free from containment, slaughtering everything in their path. Worse yet, the research hinted at a horrifying truth. The Zalzari had not been fighting an external enemy. The Devourers were not invaders. They were the Zalzari themselves, a species that had pushed too far, defied nature itself, and paid the ultimate price. As Kessler continued reading, alarms blared across the facility. Sensors detected movement. Something was still alive down here. Rains turned to the team. "We're leaving. Now." But before they could retreat, the ground trembled. The ruins above them, the shattered remains of a once great empire, had been still for centuries. But now, something was waking up, the last remnants of Project Revenant, and they were hungry. The tremors began as a distant, unsettling vibration beneath their boots, a rhythmic pulse that echoed through the ruined facility, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the flickering emergency lights pulsed in uneven intervals, as if responding to the awakening presence below. The human expedition team, once cautious but steady, was now on high alert, fingers tightening around their weapons, breathing shallow, senses honed to every whisper of movement in the suffocating darkness. Commander Rains made a snap decision. "Kessler, pull the files, everything you can extract. Then we move." The scientist's hands flew over the ancient console, bypassing primitive security layers with the precision of a surgeon. Data poured in. Text files, holographic recordings, biometric logs of test subjects. But it was the final entry that made her stomach drop. Project Revenant. Subject Prime is still operational. Her breath hitched. Still operational? That was impossible. Before she could warn the team, a sound cut through the silence. A low, guttural chittering, like the grinding of stone against metal, but layered with something organic, something alive. The last experiment, a flash of movement. The nearest Marine barely had time to react before something lunged from the shadows, a blur of sinew and gleaming biometal, moving with inhuman speed. The creature struck with terrifying precision, its claws cutting through the soldier's armor as if it were paper. A single choked gasp, then silence. Rains spun, weapon raised, firing instinctively. The muzzle flash illuminated the thing. In the darkness, it wasn't Zalzari, not anymore. Once, it might have resembled them. Vaguely humanoid, but grotesquely elongated. Its limbs stretched and reinforced with an alien alloy that pulsed with unnatural energy. Its face was a mockery of sentience. The remnants of its former self twisted into something unrecognizable. Eyes replaced by hollow, glowing slits that burned like embers. Its body was a fusion of flesh and metal, as if evolution had been forced upon it, reshaping it into something beyond life or death. And worst of all, it wasn't alone. From the depths of the ruins, more shapes emerged, some crawling on all fours, others moving with an eerie, unnatural grace. Their bodies glowed with residual energy, powered by the same experiment that had doomed this world. These were the Devourers, the final creation of the Zalzari, and they had spent centuries adapting, waiting. And now, fresh prey had arrived. "Fall back!" Rains shouted, unloading another burst of plasma fire. The bullet struck home, but the creatures barely flinched. What should have been killing shots merely slowed them down. The Marines retreated in tight formation, covering each other, as they moved toward the exit. But the facility had become a maze of collapsing corridors and twisted metal. The tremors were getting worse. Something deeper below, something larger, was stirring. Dr. Kessler's voice crackled over comms. "Commander, I think I found the control room. I can trigger a purge. Wipe the entire facility." Rains didn't hesitate. "Do it!" Kessler's fingers flew over the console, inputting the final command. A countdown flashed across the screens. Facility purge initiated. Total systems collapse in 90 seconds. The creatures screamed, a deafening, bone-rattling chorus of rage and hunger. The team sprinted for the surface, the escape, and the nightmare above. As they burst through the entrance, the planet's dying light washed over them. Dropships were already inbound, engines roaring as pilots pushed them to their limits. The facility beneath them groaned like a wounded beast, its structure beginning to cave in as the purge sequence took hold. But then, something worse happened. The sky changed. The thick, swirling clouds that had smothered the planet began to move, twisting unnaturally as if responding to some unseen force. The team barely made it aboard the dropships before the first shockwave rippled outward from the ruins. It wasn't an explosion. It was something else. An energy pulse that shattered the air, sending arcs of electricity skittering across the sky like living veins of fire. As the fleet in orbit scrambled to analyze the disturbance, they found something terrifying. The pulse wasn't just planetary. It was a signal, a call, and something out there had answered. Rains barely had time to register the implications before the fleet's long-range sensors detected movement. An unknown fleet had just emerged from deep space. No drive signatures, no known configurations, nothing that matched any records in the galactic archives. These were not standard warships. They were massive, their hulls organic and shifting, like living things wrapped in the cold embrace of metal. They moved with an eerie grace, as if they weren't traveling through space, but through something else entirely. The bridge of the Valkyrie erupted into chaos. The newcomers weren't broadcasting any signals, no hails, no warnings. And then, as the largest vessel shifted course, it opened its maw. A structure resembling a colossal, gaping mouth unfolded, stretching impossibly wide. From within its depths, a sphere of roiling energy began to build, gravitational forces bending space around it. It wasn't a weapon in any conventional sense. It was something worse, a fundamental force of nature, a pocket of raw entropy capable of erasing entire fleets from existence. The realization struck like ice down Rain's spine. The Zalzari had not just doomed themselves with their experiments. They had called something from the void, something that had been waiting, something that never stopped hunting. Rains turned to his officers. His voice was steel. "Prepare for emergency jump. Now." But as the human fleet began its retreat, the thing in the void did something that sent terror lancing through every soul aboard. It turned, not toward the Zalzari ruins, not toward the dying world. It turned toward Earth. And then, it began to move. Aboard the Valkyrie, alarms blared like desperate cries of warning, flashing red lights casting erratic shadows across the tense faces of the bridge crew. The tactical display showed a cold, unfeeling reality. The unknown fleet was moving, and Earth was now its destination. Commander Rains stood rigid, his eyes locked onto the viewscreen. The largest of the alien vessels loomed in the darkness, like a silent titan, its hull pulsing with strange organic light, shifting as though alive. But it was the massive rift forming at its core that sent a chill down his spine. Space itself seemed to be folding, spiraling into a chaotic singularity that defied all known physics. "Admiral, they're not just heading toward Earth," came the strained voice of Lieutenant Hale from the sensor station. "They're accelerating, and their energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. They aren't using conventional drives. It's more like—" He hesitated. Rains clenched his jaw. "Like what, Lieutenant?" Hale swallowed hard. "Like they're warping space itself. bending reality to move. A stunned silence hung over the bridge. Even in an age of interstellar travel where humanity had conquered the limits of light speed, this was something entirely different. There were no standard physics guiding these ships, no ion trails, no jump signatures. It was as if they were slipping between dimensions, using something far older, far more primal than any known method of propulsion. The implications were horrifying. Rains turned to the comms officer. "Get me the fleet, Admiral. Now." Humanity's gamble. The fleet was scattered, unprepared for an encounter like this. While Earth's defenses were formidable, they had been built to withstand known threats. Pirates, rogue factions, hostile empires. Not this. The Valkyrie's comms cracked to life, connecting to the main fleet command aboard the UES Aegis, humanity's flagship. Admiral Kova's face appeared on screen, his expression unreadable beneath the dim lighting of the war room. "Commander Rains, report." "Sir, we have a situation. The unknown fleet is heading toward Earth. Their propulsion system is beyond anything we've encountered. We don't know their intent, but if they consider us a threat..." Kova cut him off. "We already know." A second feed appeared, this time from an outpost near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The footage was shaky, but the horror was unmistakable. One of the alien vessels had split apart into dozens of smaller crafts, each moving with eerie, unnatural fluidity. They weren't shaped like standard warships. No straight lines, no recognizable engines. They shifted as they flew, twisting like biological entities, their surfaces rippling as if adjusting to the vacuum of space itself. And then came the worst part. The feed showed a colony ship, one of Earth's deep space vessels, carrying thousands of civilians. The alien craft latched onto it, their hulls extending like tendrils of liquid metal, merging with the structure as if consuming it. The comms channel from the colony ship crackled with panicked screams, then silence. The ship was gone, not destroyed, not obliterated by a beam or missile. It had been absorbed. The line from Europa Station flickered and cut out. Rains exhaled sharply. "Sir, we need a response now." Admiral Kova didn't hesitate. "We're enacting Protocol Ragnarok. Every available fleet is being recalled to Sol. High Command has authorized first strike measures. Commander Rains, your mission just changed." "To what, sir?" Kova leaned forward, his expression cold. "We're going to send a message to whatever these things are, loud and clear. First contact with fire." The UES Helios, one of humanity's most advanced dreadnoughts, led the charge. Armed with the latest antimatter torpedoes and an experimental graviton lance, it was designed to face the most dangerous enemies in the galaxy. But against an opponent no one understood, even its formidable firepower might not be enough. The plan was simple in theory. Launch a preemptive strike. Show the aliens that humanity would not go quietly. The first wave of human warships fired, their opening salvos. A volley of torpedoes raced toward the approaching fleet, their antimatter cores glowing with destructive energy. Direct hits. The torpedoes collided with one of the smaller alien crafts, detonating with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. For a moment, there was hope. And then, the wreckage reformed. The damaged alien vessel twisted, its broken hull reshaping, reconstructing itself with terrifying speed. It wasn't regeneration. It was something more advanced, like the ship remembered what it had been before impact, and simply became whole again. The Valkyrie's bridge fell into a stunned silence. "That's impossible," Kessler whispered, her fingers trembling over the console. Admiral Kova's voice came over the fleet-wide channel, grim and unyielding. "Adjust strategy. Full retreat. We're dealing with something beyond conventional warfare." But it was already too late. The largest alien ship responded, not with a counterattack, not with weapons, but with a pulse. A shockwave of pure energy erupted from its core, sweeping across the battlefield in an instant. Every human ship caught in its radius froze, their systems shutting down, engines flickering into darkness. The Helios, the pride of the fleet, went silent, drifting like a dead thing in the void. It wasn't an EMP. It was something deeper, something that had reached into the very fabric of the ships themselves and rewritten reality around them, and Then the alien fleet spoke. Not through sound, not through text or language, but through something deeper. A voice inside their minds, a chorus of layered whispers, ancient and vast, carrying a message that sent a wave of existential dread through every human consciousness. You were never meant to leave your cradle. You are an anomaly. A mistake. The cycle must correct itself. Rains felt an overwhelming pressure in his skull, as if something was pushing down on his very existence. Around him, the crew clutched their heads, some collapsing as the sheer weight of the message crushed their thoughts. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The alien fleet turned away, abandoning their course toward Earth. But this was no mercy. Their message had been clear. Humanity's mere existence was a problem, an error that had to be corrected, and somewhere, deep in the abyss of space, they would return to finish what had been started. The silence that followed was deafening. Aboard the Valkyrie, the bridge crew was frozen in stunned disbelief. The whispered message still echoed in their minds, a lingering aftershock of something vast and ancient. You were never meant to leave your cradle. The words weren't just a warning, they were a verdict. But the alien fleet was gone, not destroyed, not defeated. They had chosen to leave. No, to delay. To return when the time was right. Commander Rains staggered back against his console, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Around him the rest of the crew were in similar states, some gripping their heads, others clutching the edges of their stations as though holding on to reality itself. The lights flickered back to full brightness. Systems slowly rebooted. The shockwave had dissipated, and yet everything had changed. The aftermath and the unseen. Threat across the battlefield, human ships that had once been powerless were now regaining function. Engines sputtered back to life, weapon systems recalibrated, and emergency protocols swept through every fleet vessel like an automated triage system. But something was wrong. The Helios, the most advanced dreadnought in human history, remained dead in space. Rains turned to Lieutenant Hale, who was furiously working at the sensor station. "What's our status?" Hale's fingers trembled over the console as he read the new data streaming in. "We're functional again, but there's something I don't understand." Rains leaned over, scanning the information, and his blood ran cold. Across the fleet, human ships had suffered no structural damage. There were no hull breaches, no destroyed systems, no external evidence that they had even been attacked. But internally, the deeper diagnostics painted a different picture. It was subtle, almost undetectable. A shift in code. The ship's AI systems had been altered in ways that defied logic. The smallest calculations, navigation, targeting, energy distribution, were off by the slightest margins. Fractions of a degree. Milliseconds of delay. Nothing that would be immediately noticeable. But when applied on a large scale, when warships had to act in perfect coordination, where split-second timing meant life or death, these changes could mean total disaster. They didn't disable our ships, Rains realized. They infected them. Creeping horror filled the bridge. The aliens had touched their systems and left something behind. Humanity's leaders. The fleet's retreat back to Sol was immediate. By the time the Valkyrie and the remaining warships re-entered the solar system, every human colony and outpost had received the emergency broadcast. The entire Terran military had gone on high alert, and the United Earth Council, humanity's governing body, had already gathered in a state of crisis. At the heart of Luna Prime, Earth's largest off-world station, the leaders of humanity stood before a vast holotable, where real-time data from the returning fleet was being analyzed. President Elena Vargas, a woman known for her unwavering resolve, tapped a finger against the table, eyes scanning the reports. Beside her stood Grand Admiral Tobias Kova, the man responsible for Earth's military defenses, his expression grim. The Valkyrie's transmission played once more, the alien message ringing through the chamber like a ghostly judgment. You were never meant to leave your cradle. The room remained deathly silent until Vargas finally spoke. This wasn't just a warning. This was a test. Kova nodded. They studied us. measured our response. And now, they know exactly how to destroy us. Vargas exhaled, her voice dropping. Do you think they'll return? The question lingered. No one wanted to answer, because deep down, they all knew the truth. They never left. The hidden war begins. Weeks passed. Then months. The world moved on. At least, that's what the public was told. Humanity continued to expand its reach into space. Colonies remained active. Trade routes were secured. Everything was normal on the surface. But behind the scenes, Earth's greatest minds were in a silent panic. Cyber warfare experts, AI specialists, and quantum physicists worked tirelessly, analyzing the hidden changes within their systems. The anomalies were so infinitesimal that only the most sophisticated decryption methods could detect them. But as time went on, the pattern became clear. The aliens hadn't just altered the ships, they had changed something fundamental about human technology itself. A growing number of ships reported unexplainable malfunctions. Navigation coordinates would subtly shift, taking vessels slightly off course. Targeting systems hesitated for a fraction of a second before firing, barely noticeable, but in a real battle, fatal. Even the deep space observation stations reported distortions, anomalies in the very fabric of reality. Stars appeared in places they shouldn't be. Gravitational fields fluctuated without cause. Something was watching them. Something was already here. The first incident, it wasn't until a colony ship, the UES Horizon, mysteriously vanished on its way to Alpha Centauri that everything changed. The distress beacon was activated, but there was no transmission. No signs of damage. No wreckage. The ship had simply ceased to exist. And then, a week later, it returned. Floating just outside the orbit of Mars, the Horizon drifted in the void, seemingly untouched. Its hull was pristine. Its systems were operational. But when the retrieval teams boarded the ship, it was empty. No crew. No bodies. No trace that anyone had ever been aboard. And deep in the ship's data logs, buried beneath layers of corrupted code, there was a message. Not from the Horizon's crew. Not from any human source. But from them. It was just a single sentence embedded in the very framework of the ship's AI. A sentence that sent a chill through every analyst who saw it. You have been touched by the void. The meaning was clear. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It had already begun. The return of the UES Horizon sent shockwaves through every level of human society. For the public, it was a mystery. One that dominated news cycles and filled conspiracy forums with wild theories. The disappearance and sudden reappearance of an entire colony ship, untouched but eerily empty, became the most haunting enigma of the century. For the military and scientific elite, however, it was something far worse. The Horizon wasn't just a ship. It was a message, and the message was clear. The war had already begun. The silent invasion, a war beyond comprehension, aboard Luna Prime, humanity's greatest minds worked tirelessly, dissecting every piece of data from the Horizons. Systems, the logs, the life support records, the black box recordings, everything was intact. And yet, none of it made sense. Admiral Tobias Kova stood at the center of the command chamber, surrounded by top-ranking military officials and leading scientists. On the massive holoscreen before them, a 3D model of the Horizon rotated slowly, displaying every detail of the vessel. Kova's voice was like steel. Tell me what I'm looking at. Dr. Elias Sorensen, one of humanity's most brilliant AI specialists, ran a hand through his graying hair. Admiral, the ship is perfectly fine. The systems are running exactly as they should be. There's no sign of forced entry. No life support failures. No atmospheric leaks. It's as if the crew just stopped existing. Vargas, the president of the United Earth Council, narrowed her eyes. And the message? You have been touched by the void? What the hell does that mean? Sorensen hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he pulled up a new set of data on the holoscreen. Quantum readings. The numbers on the display weren't just unsettling. They were impossible. The Horizon is not the same ship that left Earth. Kova's fists clenched. Explain, Sorensen pointed to the quantum signature data. Every object in the universe has a unique quantum fingerprint, a kind of cosmic identifier. When the Horizon left Earth, we had its readings logged. But this ship, the one that came back? He exhaled sharply. It's close. Too close, but not exact. It's as if the ship has been rewritten, as if something copied it, atom for atom. A heavy silence fell over the room. You're saying this isn't our ship? Vargas asked. Sorensen shook his head. I'm saying it's not the same Horizon that left. This thing is a reconstruction, an almost perfect duplicate, but almost isn't good enough. And whoever or whatever did this, they wanted us to notice. The Horizon's final log, the last words of the crew. Then came the last revelation. Buried beneath layers of corrupted data was one final transmission from the Horizon's crew. It had never been sent. It had never been received. But it had been recorded. The chamber went deathly silent as Sorensen activated the playback. The screen flickered. The image was grainy. But there, standing on the bridge of the Horizon, was Captain Evelyn Carter. Her face was pale, her uniform disheveled. The emergency lights behind her cast an ominous red glow across the command deck. This is Captain Evelyn Carter of the UES Horizon. If anyone finds this message, if anyone hears me, she swallowed, gripping the console so tightly her knuckles turned white. Do not search for us. Do not try to understand what happened. There is no rescue. There is no escape. A strange, shimmering distortion flickered across the screen. The feed glitched, the image warping. Carter's voice became uneven, distorted, almost inhuman. They are not what we thought. They are not flesh. They are not machines. They are something else. Something old. Something that does not think in ways we understand. A loud, grating noise filled the audio, like the deep, resonant hum of something vast and unknowable pressing against reality itself. Carter's eyes widened. They are already here. The video cut to static. Sorensen exhaled sharply. That was the last thing recorded before the ship disappeared. We have no idea how this footage survived or why the ship was returned. But whatever took them, it wasn't just some advanced alien species. It was something else entirely. Kova's voice was low and grim. We've been treating this as a military conflict, a war we can fight. But what if... He hesitated, his gaze dark. What if this isn't a war at all? The first signs of collapse humanity was powerful. Its fleets were unmatched in firepower. Its soldiers were hardened by centuries of conflict. But all of that strength meant nothing if the enemy didn't fight with weapons. If the enemy didn't fight at all. The signs of collapse came swiftly. Across the colonies, subtle but catastrophic, failures began occurring. At Europa Station, deep beneath Jupiter's ice-covered moon, an entire research facility went silent overnight. The life support systems were functional. The security feeds showed empty hallways, doors still sealed, lights still on, but every scientist and worker inside, gone. On New Olympus, a thriving city on Mars, the AI overseeing the colony's infrastructure shut down unexpectedly, causing mass panic. When engineers accessed the system, they found only one line of text in its core programming. You are not alone. And then came the disappearances. Not in the colonies, not in deep space, on Earth. Entire families vanished overnight. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. It was as if they had simply ceased to exist, just like the crew of the Horizon. The tipping point came when a Terran battleship, the UES Aegis, failed to report back from a routine patrol near the asteroid belt. A reconnaissance team was dispatched to investigate. They found the ship drifting in space, completely intact. But when they boarded, it was the Horizon all over again. The ship was empty. The systems were functional. The crew's last recorded transmission spoke of strange anomalies, whispers in the void, and reality itself beginning to warp around them. And in the Aegis core memory banks, buried under layers of encrypted data, was a new message. You do not belong here. The final warning, and humanity's fading time. It was no longer a question of whether the enemy would strike. The invasion had already begun. But it wasn't a war of ships and guns. It wasn't a battle of firepower. It was something else. Something ancient. Something that existed outside the boundaries of human comprehension. And humanity had already lost far more than it realized. The only question that remained was when the end would come, and whether humans could find a way to stop it before they, too, became nothing more than whispers in the void. The disappearance of the UES Aegis was the final confirmation of humanity's worst fears. This was not a war. This was not an invasion in any conventional sense. It was something far worse. An existential unraveling, a slow and deliberate erasure of everything humanity had built. And yet, despite the overwhelming unknown, one truth became evident. If humanity did nothing, it would cease to exist. Admiral Tobias Kova stood before the United Earth Council, his voice carrying the weight of history itself. We are not being conquered. We are being erased. And if we do not act now, if we hesitate, if we wait for more answers, we will not be here to ask the next question. The time for theories was over. The time for action had come. The final plan, a desperate gamble. Every scientific mind, every military strategist, every intelligence expert, everyone left standing, converged on Luna Prime to craft a strategy. But how do you fight an enemy that does not leave a trace? An enemy that does not attack with fleets or weapons? An enemy that does not conquer, but simply makes you disappear? Dr. Elias Sorensen, exhausted beyond recognition, stared at the holographic projections of the Horizon, Aegis, Europa Station, and New Olympus, all victims of the same force. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. We have one lead. Just one. He pulled up the last decrypted data from the Aegis. The message, "You do not belong here." The phrase had appeared in every disappearance. And the one common factor? Each event occurred in deep space, far beyond Earth's immediate grasp. They aren't attacking us. They're responding to us. A cold realization swept across the room. Sorensen continued, forcing himself to explain the unexplainable. We always assumed first contact would be with a species like us. Something biological, technological, something we could negotiate with or fight against. But what if these entities don't see us that way? What if they view us as something out of place in the fabric of reality? Something that shouldn't exist beyond our own world? Kova's expression darkened. They see us as intruders. Sorensen nodded. And they aren't killing us. They're removing us, correcting some kind of cosmic imbalance. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not at war. Humanity had trespassed. And now it was being erased, not out of malice, but out of something even more terrifying: indifference. Vargas, the president of the United Earth Council, leaned forward. So how do we stop them? The impossible choice, retreat or oblivion. The answer was horrifying in its simplicity. We have to leave. Silence. Then chaos. Every military official, every corporate leader, every scientist burst into frantic debate. Leave? Retreat? Abandon space? The very idea was unthinkable. Humanity had fought for centuries to break free from Earth's grasp. It had conquered Mars, built cities on the moons of Jupiter, constructed vast colonies across the stars. Was the answer really to give it all up? Kova's voice cut through the noise. If we don't pull back now, there will be nothing left to defend. Sorensen took a breath. We have to do more than retreat. We have to sever the connection entirely. Shut down every off-world colony. Abandon every station. Dismantle every deep space fleet. No transmissions, no signals. If they see us as an anomaly, then we have to erase ourselves from their perception. Humanity had always fought for its place among the stars. Now, for the first time, it had to disappear willingly, before something else made it disappear forever. The Exodus, a race against time. The next weeks were a blur of desperate evacuation. Entire cities on Mars were emptied overnight. The moons of Jupiter, once beacons of human expansion, became silent and abandoned. The military scuttled their greatest, warships erasing their presence from the void. Every deep space beacon, every outpost, every communication relay was shut down, And then, the final stage. The last transmission from Luna Prime echoed through the fading network. This is humanity's final message to the void. We are no longer here, and then silence. The waiting game. Did humanity survive? On Earth, the world watched and waited. Months passed. Then a year. Then 2. And nothing happened. No more disappearances. No more strange anomalies. The horizon remained adrift, untouched, but unmoving. The Aegis remained frozen in time, never claimed by whatever force had taken its crew. And slowly, a terrifying possibility emerged. Had humanity survived? Or had it simply been ignored once it stopped reaching for the stars? Were they safe now, or were they just forgotten? The unanswered questions, and the final warning time passed, and Earth adapted. Without the colonies, without expansion, humanity turned inward, rebuilding, waiting. But the warning was never forgotten, because even though the attacks stopped, even though the disappearances ceased, one thing remained. The horizon. It never decayed, never fell apart. It drifted, untouched, preserved by something beyond understanding. A ghost of what was, a reminder of what had been lost. And every now and then, when deep space telescopes aligned just right, astronomers swore they saw something else. Not just the horizon, not just the Aegis, but something watching them, waiting. And the question that haunted every remaining scientist, every surviving leader, was the one thing humanity could never afford to ask again. What happens if we try to reach the stars once more? Would they notice? Would they come back? Or had they simply moved on? The final thought, a message to the audience. What do you think? If humanity ever encounters a force beyond its understanding, something that doesn't seek conquest, but simply erasure, what should we do? Should we fight? Retreat? Or is there something even greater we're missing? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed unraveling the mysteries of the universe with us, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps us grow this incredible community. Because out there, in the vast unknown, there's always another mystery waiting.